All right. So, good day, everyone. I hope you've all had a great day thus far. I am Nicole Cournoyer, intern with Tanka Fund, Oglala Sioux Tribe from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And I'm very excited to present my research project with you here today. Thank you for your time, your patience, and your understanding. First off, I'd like to thank Tanka Fund for giving me this opportunity to use my brain, grow some new wrinkles on my brain, and make some great connections with the interns, as seen here in my introduction slide. And it's been great being a part of the team, and I look forward to hopefully next year just keeping in touch with everybody. And yeah, just a great year moving forward. All right, let's get into it. First, I would like to talk about how important the bison are to not only myself, but all of the native nations, specifically in the northern regions. I know there's a lot of bison in Texas as well, but from as early as I can remember, we always had a buffalo hide in our house, and my dad talked about the importance of the buffalo hide, and winter counts were put on buffalo hides and how they kept us warm, and the bison, our relatives, clothed us, fed us through good times and bad. And I attended Lakota Wuglakawaonspe in Kyle, South Dakota. It was an immersion school, so language came first. Language is very important to us, keeps us alive, keeps us growing. And instead of doing a traditional Thanksgiving meal, we had more of a buffalo kill, more traditional to us, native meal, indigenous meal. That was one of my favorite experiences with the immersion school, going out to the pasture and seeing the herd. We weren't as close as we were at Kramer's Ranch. Our relatives knew it was happening that day. They were decently far. I'd say about as far as we were to right here in this picture, about that distance from Virgil's herd. That's how close we were. And seeing one of our instructors actually had all of his equipment out there, and he was aiming and getting ready to hit the buffalo right where it wasn't going to hurt the most. It was going to be a quick kill. He always hit on that topic that we don't want to hurt them any more than we have to. We want to thank them. We prayed before the kill happened. We prayed afterwards, saying thank you for the sacrifice, relative. And we brought the bison back to the school. And I remember all standing around as it was being slaughtered, and none of us were scared. We were more thankful, and we revered this relative, and we thanked him. Again, prayer throughout each process, each step in this buffalo kill. And the head was huge. I'm not sure if it was a male, but we all touched the head and said prayer, said thanks. But thank you for the sacrifice. We appreciate it. And he fed a lot of community members, not only the students' families, but surrounding families were asked to come and eat. He fed a lot of people, made a lot of happy bellies that day. So in general, bison has always just been close to home. My dad is an artist, and he carved, so traditionally the horns were used as spoons in inipi in sweat lodge ceremony to pick water up and pour it on the rocks and create the steam, the purification process. And he took that and he carved the horns and made ceremonial spoons, like it's a functional art piece, is what he liked to call it, so that everybody had a piece of him, not only him, but the bison, and everyday life, whatever you wanted to use that spoon for, mainly for wasna or pouring water at inipi. So bison very much hits close to home, and every time there's some good bapa, I get really excited, or we have some good jerky. Without further ado, Harmony in the Grasslands, Bison and Producers Creating a Sustainable Future, an investigative project including conversations with producers. I was fortunate to interview producers from South Dakota, Kansas, and Texas. They all have claimed that with the correct type of management, bison can be one of the most economically and environmentally sustainable investments. Not only will the grasses and soil soil and water improve, but producers have noticed many pollinators reappearing and doing their part in maintaining the grasslands. But I will share with you. I will share how the herd managerial styles impact the environment in positive and the negative ways of both cattle and bison, the differences between cattle and bison, not only their behavioral differences, but again, their impacts, and what it looks like to maintain a healthy grassland, what a healthy grassland looks like, and what a not so healthy grassland looks like. And then the roles and responsibilities of the producers with their different herds. So again, I interviewed 3 producers from South Dakota, Texas, and Kansas. South Dakota, I interviewed Gail Uses a Knife. She has a smaller herd over about 8,000 acres. She's newer to have her own ranch, but she grew up ranching and farming, raising cattle with her father. So she's still newer to the game, but she gave some great insight, and she hopes to receive buffalo from Tanka Fund. She's very excited, and she learned a lot of good uses for their fur, just like Kala was mentioning at Kramer Ranch, for the socks and woven the fur into material to be able to use for various projects. And for Kansas, I interviewed Blake Follis of Motokini Ranch. He has experience in the northeastern part of Oklahoma with his grandfather's ranch. I didn't quite get the number of head that his grandfather had of bison, but he had a lot of great information, and he corroborated the observation of the influx in pollinators, the grassland inhabitants such as coyotes, deer, antelope, rabbits, which in turn coexist with the bison and eat the smaller forages, eat the smaller forbs. The insects are kind of their own insect control. And he also mentioned that bison are not very domesticated. They don't care about a fence. If they want something on the other side of the fence, they will jump over it or just take it out completely, and they want whatever's over there. And then I also had the opportunity to interview Chris and Theta Pogue of GP Ranch in Texas. And they were talked about the human impact and how much of an influence it has on the success of the bison. They stated the foundation is very key in creating your herd, in creating the success and ensuring the success of your herd. They also agreed that bison are not the most domesticated of animals. They are more considered wildlife than cattle. Bison and cattle differences. So, a producer proclaimed that intellectual differences between cattle and bison. Bison will find grass and water instead of waiting for it to replenish. This is actually an interesting story from Blake Follis. He said that he had witnessed a really tough drought in, I think it was Oklahoma, and the cattle didn't quite understand that the water's not going to come back. But they were on large enough pasture. There were 2 water sources, reliable water sources. One water source unfortunately dried up, and the cattle were just staying there waiting for it to replenish. It wasn't until he and his grandfather went out there and actually had to move them to the other water source for them to realize, oh, hey, there's other water. We don't just have to stay here and wait for it and die, essentially, because they didn't think about that. They're like, oh, there's nothing over here. We're not going to leave. Just stayed there. This goes into bison definitely roam more intuitively than cattle do. And their roaming creates almost like tilled dirt, tilled ground, the way that their hooves are created, hooves are structured. They till that dirt, they till the ground. And then as they continue roaming, they defecate, which contains a lot of seeds and other nutrients. And in a way, they replenish the earth like that. They're their own little ranchers as they roam from water source to water source or just roam around their land, which creates a more sustainable grasslands. And in some jurisdictions, sadly, bison are treated as livestock. Luckily, others do see them as wildlife, That unfortunately does determine how they are managed and sadly can be managed incorrectly just because of where they are in the state or in the country. They can be managed as livestock. They can be sent off to feedlots, which I will get into later on. Producers agree that bison do carry a larger upfront investment, but they manage themselves. So there's less time and money spent going out there and giving them all these vaccines, catching them, stressing them out. There are different ways that the veterinarians work with the bison producers to make it as low stress, low cost as we can to ensure the quality of meat and the longevity of the herd. Like I said, bison are great at maintaining themselves. They just need ample land and accessible water sources, while cattle do often need constant moving around of pastures, feedings, supplements, vaccines, pretty high vet bills, and many bison producers said that they've never had to help a mama calf. But on the other hand, cattle do have some trouble sometimes. And it's just more stress on the animal and more stress on yourself because you're manually out there trying to help this mama calve, and then you just might end up losing both of them because it's such a stressful situation. Bison, on the other hand, maintain themselves and they can get themselves out of just about any situation. Like I said, cattle do have a large economic benefit in terms of acquiring the cattle, raising them, fattening them up often, and then selling them for slaughter for a high profit margin because they weigh more. So you're gonna get more money the more your cattle weigh. And they're just mainstream. Everybody knows not everybody in this call has at least had a hamburger before. Not many have had a bison burger or a bison fillet. Very much United States is beef centered, cattle centered with the steak and the beef, the dairy. Bison is kind of new. It's a newer thing. And it should be treated as wildlife, as they should be treated for ceremonial purposes for us. It would be nice to see an economy grow as bison grow, as not popularity, but just overall helping the economy with the bison being sustainable. So maintaining a healthy grassland. What does a healthy grassland and pasture look like? So it would consist of many different grasses, combination of shrubs and forage, not overgrazed, diverse canopy coverage, little to no soil erosion, stable water sources. So as the cattle roam, move about the pasture, they sometimes can move in a line in that those cattle paths or even your vehicle paths as you're going out to check on them, that same impression in the dirt, in the ground, eats away. And then as it rains, it's going to take that soil with it and begin washing away the soil. Whereas bison move more in herds and you don't have to check on them very often. And right here, this pasture looks just terrible. It's not a very healthy pasture. There's very little coverage right here, ground cover, very little grass, very little forbs. You can see some soil erosion and yeah, just not a good pasture, not a good grasslands. So feedlots, as I said before, the United States is very centered around the cattle, beef, and dairy industry. This is one of the ways that we keep up with the demand. It's very sad to look at, and this is not good for anybody. This is a feedlot in the Texas Panhandle, known as the Southwest Feedlot. It can hold up to 4,500 head of cattle in this very bare dirt pens for many months at a time, fattening them up on flaked corn and then sending them off to slaughter. And you can even see in the pictures right here, all that dust being picked up, that fecal matter being kicked up. Many residents in the area surrounding this feedlot have complained to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality with little to no action. And it is also common notion that many in these surrounding areas have increased respiratory issues because of all of that fecal matter particulate floating in the air. And many have even mentioned there's a bit of a haze in the neighborhood, and they seek refuge in their homes. They don't go much of anywhere because of this feedlot. It's wreaking havoc on many who are immunocompromised with asthma. And it's not a good deal all around. Is also one of the largest sources of methane emissions. I didn't know this. So methane emissions are actually 8 times more powerful than CO2 emissions. And they have more aspects of warming the earth. The producer roles and responsibilities. So as Tanka Fund continues their work, they are looking at conservation practice standards and teaming up with producers to start utilizing these practices. Riparian herbaceous cover, prescribed grazing, prescribed burning, upland wildlife habitat, specifically upland wildlife habitat with bison, to the bison not only increase the variety of species, but the upland wildlife habitat. For example, planting a few trees is going to increase birds, not only birds, but rabbits, other insects that are helpful to the environment. That is a big conservation practice standard that is very beneficial to the grasslands. Rotational grazing also goes into conservation practice standards. The vaccinating. So bison can maintain themselves majority of the time. Sometimes they do need the occasional vaccine depending on their region, their climate, what they may be exposed to. And then the fence lines is a very big thing with bison as well. They can clear jump pretty high. And like I said before, if they want something on the other side of that fence, they're gonna take it out. They don't care about that fence. They're wild. They will take you out. They'll take you out like they took out that woman in her pants. And breeding. So I believe it was Blake Follis who mentioned his grandfather only really sold to other bison producers to keep the bison genetics, that bison blood, as pure as possible. So there was no beefalo or whatever the other term is, and no beefalo, and just maintaining a healthy herd and growing the herd. Some final thoughts. It would be awesome to see the bison being returned to the lands, lives, and economies of Native people soon. But there has to be a mindset change, a thought process change in these big politicians who are fighting for cattle industry, the beef and dairy. Those are really big producers of economy unfortunately, in our country. So to reach a goal of sustainable grasslands and agricultural industry must need to change within the political, economical, and social structures. Increasing the number of bison ranchers is just one aspect of change that needs to happen simultaneously with the mindset change. Soon, I hope to see more bison roaming and have each tribe have, well, historically, whichever tribe has ancestors of having bison. That would be really great to see. And that would be more growing the economy on the reservations, because many of you know the economy, the conditions on the reservations are very poor, very poverty stricken. These are a couple of my citations. Just a quick mention, just about all of the photos taken are from me. I greatly enjoyed my time. I love photography. It's one of my passions. Wopila, thank you very much. A couple of acknowledgements. Tanka Fund, Makoche, NBA, Sacred Storm, Inner Tribal Buffalo Council, and SDSU. I've learned a lot. I've had great experience this summer, and I hope to be back.